In a recent episode, I translated things men say and what women eventually realize they meant. But in the spirit of fairness, today we're flipping the script because women absolutely have our own phrases that men interpret sometimes funnier than others. Like when a woman says, I'm fine, or do whatever you want, or it's nothing. And at first, men usually take those statements at face value. They're like, okay, fine. She said what she said, moving on. But after a while, you notice a pattern because somehow women who say, I'm fine, are usually not fine. Women who say, do whatever you want, usually care a lot more than they let on. And the women who say it's nothing, it's usually something. So today's episode is basically a little translation guide. Things women say, what men often think they mean versus what women actually mean. Welcome to another episode of She's Probably Talking to Other Guys. Just a friendly reminder, I'm not a therapist, psychologist, or expert in human behavior. This is a judgment-free assumption checking zone. Take what resonates and leave the rest. Jumping right in, our first one is, I'm fine. What men generally assume is, okay, she's fine. She said she's fine, she's fine. What women tend to mean is something's bothering them. Maybe it's not worth bringing up. Maybe it's something they're debating on kind of just brushing under the rug, if we say that phrase. Maybe there is something really deeper that they don't want to talk about in that moment. But I feel like the phrase, I'm fine, generally, I'm gonna say like a bold, like 98% of the time, I truly don't believe it means that whoever says it is fine. I think that it's a phrase that women tend to use. I know that men use it too, but being a woman and having used that phrase, it just kind of like comes out naturally. Sometimes it's just because maybe we don't want to get into it in the moment. Maybe it's deeper. Maybe we're not in a place where I want to have this conversation right now. There's obviously a lot that can go into it. And sometimes I'm sure when women say that they're fine, they really are fine. But in my experience, I think that it kind of comes off as just a phrase that we tend to use because we don't want to get into it in the moment. Devil's advocate, sometimes women genuinely are fine. Sometimes you can maybe tell by the tone. Maybe if she's calm and she's moving on, there is a possibility she's actually fine. Just, it tends to be the common phrase I feel that women use when we're not fine. It's okay to pause. It's okay to cool off. It's okay to say that if you just need to take a moment and you don't want to get into it. But you could also provide a little bit more context too. Like maybe it's a habit to say I'm fine, but as you go on with your journey, maybe a little more context could be helpful in the future. Just my 2 cents. The next phrase, do whatever you want. What the translation tends to be is complete freedom to choose. A lot of times what women tend to mean is they have a preference or they really do have an opinion on it, but they don't want to seem controlling or they don't want to stop you from doing something maybe that they know you want to do. So they tell you to do whatever you want. But sometimes it comes from a place of maybe checking what your priorities are. And I know that, yes, that can come across as shady because why wouldn't she just say that? I don't know. I'm not her. Everyone's different. But again, I think that the phrase do whatever you want does not actually always mean do whatever you want. For devil's advocate, sometimes it really does mean do whatever you want. Like maybe they genuinely don't care and don't have an opinion on what you're about to do. I think, again, as always, it depends on the context, it depends on the situation. If someone was saying do whatever you want in a way, though, where they did actually care, again, I think that clarity and honesty would be a much better option because just as we chatted in how men could explain themselves a bit better in order to not cause confusion, we can also work on explaining ourselves better to not cause confusion as well. It's nothing. A lot of times the translation is, there's no problem here. She said it's nothing, it's nothing. What women often mean is there is something, but maybe they're still deciding on if it's worth digging into it or not. Again, a situation where maybe being a bit more specific could help if it really is something. Devil's advocate, sometimes it truly isn't a big deal. Sometimes people notice something small and don't care. Sometimes people just genuinely don't care no matter how big the situation is or whatever it might be. I think that something I've noticed within myself is that, yes, I used to say it's nothing when it was something, but at the same time, I also started realizing that teeny little things actually are nothing at the end of the day, in my opinion. I know that people have different reactions to different things that happen during life, but I would say that the less overthinking, the less drama, the less negative energy I can allow into my current situation, the better. So if it truly is something that really doesn't matter, then yes, it's nothing. And it truly is nothing. But if it is something, it's probably better to not make the other person wonder because I like to kind of go with the idea that, you know, if you don't like when a guy makes you question things or makes you nervous or makes you wonder about what the heck is going on, they probably don't like it either. Just my thought. The next phrase, I don't care. What men tend to hear is any option is fine. They can choose what they please. I think sometimes women don't like making every single decision. And at the end of the day, it's just nice to have their partner make a decision. So just simply they don't have to. Like when you ask a woman what we want to eat, I can tell you everything I don't want. Very rarely can I tell you everything I do want. If there's something that I really do want, I don't usually wait for you to ask me. I would usually just tell you, like, hey, I'm in the mood for Italian tonight. Like, I wouldn't usually just wait for you to ask me that and then burst out and, like, actually know. I usually don't know if someone asks me. But again, like that example, maybe she just doesn't want you to ask her that, and maybe she just wants you to pick up something that you know she likes. Something like that. But again, of course, with all of these statements, they could be clarified. Devil's advocate, sometimes she really just like doesn't care and just wants you to make a decision. So, like I said, if you know that there's a food that you know she always likes, just get it. Or if maybe she's just tired of making decisions about setting up plans or going out or if you're going to stay in, maybe just make a little date and plan it yourself. I mean, I don't know your girl, I don't know the woman that you're with, but again, I think just sometimes women get tired and we don't want to make decisions sometimes. But then there are women who always want to make the decisions. So I guess you need to learn your woman. Another phrase, it's up to you. Again, comes along with the decision making. So sometimes we literally mean, please just decide because I don't want to make another decision, which I guess the statement that I just said would actually be 10 times more clear than it's up to you. Sometimes women mean that they want their man to take initiative, though. So sometimes it comes along the lines of, well, where do you want to go out to eat? Why don't you just pick? Or do you want to go out to the movies? Why don't you just decide, like, hey, we're going to watch a movie at home tonight? Or, hey, I'm going to take you out to the movies. Let's go. Something along those lines. Sometimes it's just the questions and the amount of questions that can be frustrating or annoying. The next phrase. I just think it's funny. I feel like if I was going to use this phrase, it's because I already know the answer to something. Like I already found something out that maybe you were hiding from me, or maybe I already knew that you weren't being truthful about. I feel like that's when I would use that phrase. Like, I just think it's funny when. And I would be calling you out on something. I'm pretty sure that would be my case for using that one. Sometimes men think that she does actually find it funny, which could certainly be a problem if she is not finding the situation funny at all. Sometimes a sign she's not finding it funny is like something bothered her and she's kind of hinting at it and waiting to see what your reaction is. Again, a test isn't cool. I'm not down for like giving someone a test. My thing is, I would rather just already know that the person that I'm with is someone who's going to be honest because they know that I would just prefer honesty over lies. Even if it's like a tiny little white lie, I would honestly just prefer that you tell me the truth from the beginning. Like, what could you possibly be hiding? I guess would be my question. Like, if we've been together for this long, why wouldn't you just tell me the truth, kind of thing? So, yeah, I just think it's funny. Devil's advocate, sometimes it really is just funny. Not every observation is actually going to turn into a test or turn into a complaint or turn into something negative. Sometimes it is just something that's funny. Okay, I'll remember that. I don't know that I could say that I've personally really said this and meant something specific by it, though, other than being very literal. So, what men hear is she's storing information. I think that that's what I would hear as well, though, I have to admit. So, sometimes what women mean is you did something slightly offensive and she's mentally noting it. Okay. Devil's advocate, sometimes it's playful sarcasm, and then also by the tone. Hmm. I don't know. To me, that's a very literal statement. I don't think I would use that in any other way. I'm laughing because I am guilty of this one. Never mind. So the conversation is over, is typically what men interpret that as, is someone says, never mind. Devil's advocate. Sometimes someone genuinely realizes that the conversation's not important and really just means never mind. Like maybe it was about to go on the verge of not necessarily an argument, but maybe a disagreement. And she just decided, okay, you know what, this like is just totally not worth it. Never mind. It's not even a big deal. I feel like that's where I would go into never mind. Sometimes I can get this though, like if I try to explain something over and over and over and over again, and it's just like getting confusing, or it's just getting frustrating, or it's not being understood, or it's not being received well. Sometimes I'll just dial back and go, never mind. And again, more from the idea of maybe I don't know how to explain it in this moment. Maybe I'm realizing that it doesn't make sense what I'm trying to say, and I need to think of another way to say it. Again, yes, we could totally be more clear about that, but never mind is a phrase that I would say that I am guilty of. Let's move into why women tend to communicate indirectly and why it can become a problem. So I guess this is more of a sorry, not sorry situation, ladies. We are going to talk about why we need to work on this. So we're going to talk first kind of about the concept of social conditioning. So the idea that sometimes women are raised to not sound demanding. Sometimes women are raised to not speak what's on their mind, to not push something that may be considered an issue. Sometimes we kind of can get praise if we're seen as easygoing or low maintenance. I did an episode on being high maintenance and why it's a good thing, why it's positive. And again, there are some things on here that I completely disagree with. Sometimes direct communication can get labeled as dramatic, emotional, or even aggressive. Very common, women get called difficult if we sound like we know exactly what we want and we're saying things how they are. Like these are things that I have heard about me being like things that were said about me. I am someone where if I feel a certain way, especially in a business environment, I say it. There are paths in business environments I don't want to go down, and I make sure that people know that. People, for me, like if they're going to work with me, they know that I have a strong personality when it comes to certain topics. I am not someone who just kind of keeps their mouth shut anymore and just is like a yes girl all the time. I say no more often than I ever have in the past, and I love it. So, Again, I think it's more sometimes, this is not the case for everyone. Sometimes there's hesitation because of things that we've been taught to do. Sometimes we're just in the habit of communicating this way. And I'm a true believer that we could always be more clear about what we're saying or how we're saying it. I think as I get older, I just get more frustrated when people aren't clear with me. So sometimes if someone's being really wishy-washy or just not telling me the truth, for me, it's more just like, why am I even engaging in whatever conversation this is? It's getting me literally nowhere. So what's the point? So sometimes I think that my directness can come across as like, oh, she knows exactly what she wants. This is intimidating. But to the right person, it's not going to be intimidating. Or to the right person, you saying what you want should not be taken in a negative light. Unless what you want is like a bad thing, and then maybe this person doesn't want you to get involved in bad things. So that's that. An example is if you're saying, I'm fine, maybe that's not the case whatsoever, and maybe something that's bothering you is a lack of effort. So instead of saying, I'm fine, maybe it's, I need more effort. So again, just trying to be a bit more clear. If you're like safe and comfortable to do so, of course. This is all just me sharing my 2 cents. And I do believe that at some point, yes, everyone's responsible for the words that they say. You don't want to like say a phrase and then deny all responsibility for what you just said. Like, if you're going to say it, say it. If you're going to say it, own up to it. And that's something that I'm also big on. Like, don't say something to me and then all of a sudden take it back. That's not how this works. No takebacks. You said it, you said it. Now explain yourself. So maybe instead of it becoming an argument, it can just become a friendly discussion of, okay, well, can you please elaborate because I really don't know what that means? Or, okay, that sounds like very defensive, or that sounds like maybe we're going to start an argument. Can we like explore what you actually meant by that? Because that's a little confusing. So again, I think it's more just trying to find the clarity in what's going on. Because if I'm really like all about someone, I'm not just gonna let one statement turn into an argument that ends everything. Like, it's about figuring things out, and it's about having a good communication. And I don't believe that that's easy. I think that sometimes there are a lot of deep layers to finding out how you can have really good communication with someone. I don't think communication is something where it's like, oh, great, we're great communicators together. We didn't even have to try to become great communicators together. I don't really think that that's always the case. There's definitely effort on both sides that have to be put in. Now, sometimes women are saying this as emotional testing or as a test, which I'm not cool with because I've had people do that to me before and it feels so just gross is the word that I'm going to use. Like, ew, gross. I don't like it at all. Like, don't test me with something. Just be honest with me and I'll be honest with you. But if you're gonna be shady and like do weird tests, like, I'm out. That's not okay with me. I think that sometimes women say things indirectly to notice if a man will pick up on it or not. So the example of do whatever you want, if she really doesn't mean that, I think sometimes it is a common phrase that could be used as a test. Again, this is not everyone, so don't go around being paranoid now. But I think that sometimes it is a test to see, like, okay, well, is he going to choose what he wants to do? Is he going to choose me? And from me, and being a Sagittarius, I love my freedom. If I want to do something and my partner says, do whatever you want, I'm probably going to do it because I take that as do whatever you want. Okay, freedom. Yay, I'm a Sagittarius. I love my freedom. But again, at the end of the day, it comes down to communication. How do you two communicate? And if he's your partner and you do love him, I'm a big believer in he needs to have the freedom to do things that he wants to do as well within the boundaries of the relationship, right? Like, everyone's different. But again, I know that I love my freedom. I need someone who trusts me enough to let me have my freedom and know that what I'm going to do is exactly what I'm going to go out to do, that I'm not going to go and say I'm doing one thing and then go off and do something else. That's not going to vibe with me. And again, as a professional ballroom dancer, I am very clear with that in the beginning. Like, you are not going to accuse me of lying. You're not going to accuse me of anything, especially with my dance partner or anything like that. Like, that's not even an option because that's not something that I'm going to do. And I truly believe that certain situations can put people in overthinking modes, in doubting modes, in, oh, is she really out there doing that right now? I don't know if she is, kind of thing. But again, at the end of the day, I think it all comes from the foundation that you have with each other. And is it built on trust? Have one of you broken trust somehow that the other person is kind of suspecting you of being up to no good? I mean, it's all so different depending on your relationship. But again, I truly just believe that clarity and being clear and communicating is honestly the answer to a lot of problems that could occur. So being honest on this topic, I don't think that tests are cool. I don't think testing your partner, especially without them knowing, is cool. I truly don't believe that whatsoever. This comes from different layers of different experiences, and maybe not even from a like prior relationship kind of test. This could also just be from your personal experience. For example, I worked somewhere where there was a new receptionist. The owners thought it would be fun to have one of their friends call the new receptionist and intentionally be really difficult on the phone to see if the receptionist can handle it. That is not okay. Like, that is not cool whatsoever. Like, that is a test. That is shady. That is sneaky. That is so manipulative. Like, no. You're the owner, be a leader, train people for this situation. Don't ask your friends to call them and be the most difficult client they could possibly be, and then invite these staff to come in and listen to the phone call in a different room. What? Like, so for me, that's an example. Like, I hate when people do those things. I would rather you teach me and then to my face, maybe like as much as I hate in a workplace setting, as much as I hate like a role play kind of thing. It made myself cough because I laughed. So I think the communication is what matters. I think the situation and the context matters. If we're going to test each other, like, that's not cool. It's going to be in a playful situation if you think you're going to test me. Like, that's not happening because that's something where I just feel is really shady. So I'm sorry, ladies. I will never agree with you if you like to test your man to see what he's going to do. I just don't think that's cool whatsoever. And I do truly believe when it comes to different aspects of relationships, just to kind of imagine yourself on the other side of maybe how that would feel if they did this to you. Like, would you be okay with that? Would be the question that I would ask. So sometimes I think vulnerability can also cause women to say, I'm fine, or, you know, do what you want. I think that vulnerability sometimes can cause us to be a bit more indirect. So maybe we're kind of concerned that we're starting to lose a connection with this person, or maybe you're concerned that this person is starting to create distance. And then you tend to do things just to try to make it a little bit easier. Maybe you assume that you are being too demanding, or maybe you assume that you are kind of being too abrupt or too outspoken. And now you're kind of worried of losing this person. At the end of the day, I truly feel and believe that the right person is going to love you for who you are. Yes, there are always things that everyone can work on. There are always ways where you can grow more alone and with your partner. I'm a true believer in putting in work, effort, and growing alone and together to be better for each other and to be better with each other. But I do believe that flaws and all, the right person is still going to love you, even though there are so many areas where you or them together or alone could grow. So, again, depending on your situation, yes, you can feel very, very vulnerable, and always consider your safety as well and know that there are resources available if you don't feel safe in a relationship that you are in. One more thought on this is the mind reading trap. This immediately makes me think of Sabrina Carpenter's song, Read Your Mind. I cannot read anyone's mind. I'm a very literal person. If someone's flirting with me, 9 times out of 10, I have no flippin' idea that they're even trying to flirt with me. Like, I don't know. So for me, I love when things are clear. I love when things are like presented to me and easy to choose options. And I am not about the mind reading. The mind reading makes me overthink. The mind reading makes me kind of guess at things. So I am not about mind reading. Do people like mind reading? I don't know. If you have thoughts on mind reading, please comment because I am not into it whatsoever. I think that from my perspective, right, there are women who expect their man to read their mind, and there are women who just think that he's going to get everything that she's thinking without even saying it. I completely disagree with that. I also, though, from like my own perspective, I think because I'm so literal and logical, sometimes I just expect that if people want to say something to me, that they're just gonna say it. And I know that that's not the case. So for me, it's almost the opposite. You know, women expect their man to read their mind. I expect my man to just say what's on his mind. And each of them have, their possibilities of happening. Each of them have their pros and their cons and their rights and their wrongs because everybody's different. But I think that the mind reading is something where I'm just like, no, that's not going to work for me. Like, I don't think I'm going to try to read your mind. I think I'm just going to ask you a more direct question. But sometimes it comes from wanting, I guess we could go back to the thought of feeling like a priority. Like maybe you said something before, you assume that they listened and heard you, and now they're going to do that same thing every single time this comes up, and that's not always the case. Accountability. So, accountability is so important. That's part of what this episode is about because the less questions you can have sometimes in a relationship, you can have more chances, I feel, of smooth sailing. This is just my personal experience. I am not a professional in relationships whatsoever. I truly just believe that the more clear you can be with each other, the less little disruptions or the less little arguments that would come in the future. So, accountability is one. Just as you want your man to communicate clearly, you need to communicate clearly as well. You know, don't get mad at people ghosting you if you ghost them all the time. I think it's just, there's always that other side to things. How does this person feel? How does this person feel? And if I do that to them, how do I feel if they did that to me, kind of thing. So I'm a big believer in kind of considering what it feels like on the other side. If you get mad that they did something, but then you get mad at them when you did the same thing, like it's just, to me, that doesn't make sense. Growth is another big tool in communication. So learning how to grow, learning maybe your weak spots in communicating or your weak spots in general, and just trying to work on that, again, is something that can help communication to, I guess we could say, become more natural to you. Nothing's really natural until you practice it for a bit. And this is something that I talk about in ballroom dancing. People assume that they're just gonna learn the steps and memorize it, and they're so hard on themselves. And it's like, we don't remember, but when we learned how to walk, how many times did we fall over? Or how many times did we trip and land on the ground? And you had to learn walking for walking to become natural. I'm a big believer in you need to learn things in order for them to be considered natural. In my opinion, the biggest takeaway from this episode is that women don't always say exactly what we mean. But that doesn't necessarily mean we're trying to confuse anyone. A lot of the times, it comes from how we were socialized, what we were taught was acceptable, and things that were considered not acceptable at the time. Instead of saying exactly what we want or exactly how we feel, sometimes it comes out sideways, sometimes it comes out as hints, sarcasm, or it's fine when it's actually not. Being completely honest, yes, there is a point where we have to take responsibility for that because expecting someone to read your mind isn't fair. Emotional awareness in a relationship is important, but mind reading isn't the same thing as communication. And I think a lot of women, sometimes myself included, have probably fallen into that trap of thinking, well, if he really cared, he would just know. The reality is, most people aren't psychic and most people can't read your mind. They're just doing their best to interpret the information that they've been given. So if there's something that you actually need or something that you want to come across as clear, you want to say it. Don't hint at it. Don't test anyone. Don't hope that they're magically going to just figure it out. Clarity is something that can help your communication go to a completely new level. The goal in your relationship isn't to see who can decode the other person better. It's to actually understand each other. And sometimes that means being a little bit more direct, even if it's uncomfortable at first. The real translation isn't what women say versus what men say. The real takeaway is that communication gets a lot easier when we actually start saying what we mean in the first place. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of She's Probably Talking to Other Guys. Follow along on social media at spttog podcast.